Hey, thanks for watching 4-Color Commentary. This is Mark Allen, and today I'm going to talk about some gimmicks and obscurities. Now, gimmick comics, we know what those are. Those are the ones with the covers, the shiny covers. Either they have the foil or the hologram or they're acetate or something like that. You know I like those. And but gimmick comics can also be those comics that were promoting something or trying to sell something or in some way were different from your regular mainstream comics. Maybe they were trying to draw you into comic books. And we're going to talk about that with the gimmicks that I have today. But then also obscurities, which is what I want to start with today. An obscurity, an obscure comic would be one of those comics that you've probably never heard of. And I'm willing to bet most people have not heard of this comic that I'm going to talk about today. But one of those comics that didn't get as much coverage. It's not as well known as the mainstream comics from Marvel or DC or Image Comics or something like that. And so I want to start with that. This comic being called The Knewts of the Round Table. Knewts of the Round Table, little salamanders, yes. But these were not funny animal comics, and it was not, as some believed, a ripoff of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I remember this came out in 1998, and I remember taking some hits for liking this book because some people just saw it as, oh, it's another radioactive black belt hamsters. Which is the only knockoff I can remember that comes to mind right now, even though there were many knockoffs of TMNT. They say imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. Maybe so. But this book was different. This book actually told a great story. It was a dramatic book. It had wonderful art in it and dialogue. And that's what I really liked about it, because in the 90s began to be a time, the 90s was a time when art was pushed to the forefront. And, you know, the writing was almost forgotten in some cases. And you could whiz through a comic in, you know, under 5 minutes in some cases because it was all splash pages and very little speaking and no word balloons. I miss word balloons. Word balloons lets you know what's going on inside a character and what their motivations are and what drives them. Well, this book, which just was a great read and a wonderful book, was created and written by Brian Fitzgerald. The pencils and inking work, it's a black and white book, but the pencils and inking work were done, and I'm going to butcher this poor gentleman's name, but Nairut Chamsuwan, you know, and that's as close as I can come. But you had, you know, Knewts of the Round Table. As far as I know, it only had 5 issues, but you had the different characters. You had Lancelot, who was on the cover of issue 1. And I'll have to apologize because issue 3, I don't know who's on the cover of issue 3 because they didn't put his name there. And it's been years since I read these. I pulled them out for this review for this video, just to let you know about this particular obscure comic. It's a great one to go after. I guarantee you'll love to read it. But I just don't remember details right now about it. But number 2, you have Gwaine there on number 2, on issue number 2. You have this is the issue number 3, and it didn't put the name of the knight in there, and I'm not going to go in there and find out his name, but you can find out when you track him down. You can find these on eBay, but I will tell you that at least in my region, in my neck of the woods here in the Oklahoma, Missouri area, you can't find these in dollar boxes or back issue boxes. They're just not there. Issue number 4, you have Galahad with his cool you know, the cool crossbows, the crossbow pistols, you know, and then you have a couple other leading and supporting characters on the cover of issue 5. Beautifully done covers, beautifully done interior artwork, and I'm going to put some of that up here. But one of the reasons that I liked this book so much, as I mentioned, was the beautiful artwork, black and white, of course, but wasn't hard to tell what was going on, and it was just so well done. And again, the dialogue. There's plenty of story going on. It wasn't something you could just zip through. Something that had some meat on it, okay, so to speak. And so, a great obscure book that you probably never heard of, Knewts of the Round Table. Now we go from there. We go to a gimmick. This is one of those gimmicks. Now I will fully admit, again, as a dollar box diver, you know, which is just maybe some may think there are some hoi polloi collectors out there who I believe think that dollar box diving is just this side of dumpster diving. But dollar box diving, you know, is just one of my favorite things. So I might grab a cover or a book because of a cover, and it might be a book I've never even read before. To wit, All right, I've never read this book. This is called Nightmare. This is Nightmare number 0. It is from 1995, and it is an Image book. And I want to make sure I have that date right. But yes, 1995. It is an Image book, but you know, I bought it for that beautiful foil double spread cover there, and just a great, you know, just a neat, you know, the visually striking character on the front. Now very much done in kind of the Liefeld Image style of the day, but eye-catching. And if you're like me, if you're into just, you know, going out there and picking up those shiny covers, which you can pick up, you know, in this case, this was, when it came out on the stands, was $3.50, which of course is a little bit behind the average cost of a comic today. But for $1, I'll pick those up all day long. So there's a gimmick for you. Now here's another obscurity. Now, not obscure in the sense that it's not from a mainstream comic book company. This was done by DC in 1975, but it's one that has probably by now flies under the radar of a lot of people, because you won't find it in a lot of back issue bins, simply because a lot of comic book stores won't have an extensive back issue bin. And they can't all be like Comic Empire of Tulsa. And if you've never, by the way, if you've never checked out my little mini doc on Comic Empire of Tulsa, check it out on my channel. But anyway, this is Kong the Untamed. Now, the reason why I have this book, actually that was issue number 2, forgive me. Issue number 1 is a more striking cover, but the reason why I have these 2 Kongs, there was actually 5 issues, five issues in Kong, and this was again a 1975 book. You know, just great Joe Orlando art, or I'm sorry, Alfredo Alcala art inside. I love Alfredo Alcala, one of the you know, the tribe, as they called them back in the 70s. A bunch of Filipino artists, comic book artists that worked for DC, worked for Marvel. But this is just some wonderful art, and you know, just in these books of cavemen and adventure, that kind of thing. But Kong the Untamed, number 1. The reason why I have issue number 1 and issue number 2 is because the covers were done by Bernie Wrightson, the great Bernie Wrightson. And so just wonderful books to have, and just I can just look at those covers, you know, the shadows and the mood, and just, you know, Wrightson being such a master of the craft as he was, and this one as well. And I love the bright orange, almost like a, you know, a flaming, you know, dawn or dusk sky, you know, and set in the background as Kong is fighting for his life there. But really just enjoy the cover, and enjoy the interior art as well. Of issue 1 is art by Alfredo Alcala, and issue 2 as well. Now, I haven't gotten the other 3 issues, and I need to probably seek those out, because if they're also Alcala interiors, I'll want those as well. But anyway, great stuff, and that being kind of an obscure book that you may never have heard of. Now, last 2 are gimmicks, and these are gimmicks that kind of go to the heart of, well, the first one kind of goes to the heart of the fan who loves Marvel. And if you've never heard of this, this is a book that features a photo cover of Stan Lee. It is the Marvel Fumetti book. Marvel Fumetti book. And this book was published in 1983. And all it is if you remember, you know, on the letters pages, oftentimes throughout the 80s, you would see little, well, probably more in the early and mid 80s, you would see little panels with pictures, black and white photos of, you know, sometimes they'd show the black and white photos of what goes on in the back offices of Marvel, and they'd put word balloons on them. They'd tell a little story. That's what this book is, all throughout. It's humorous, and there's a lot of you know, photos in there of different staff members, which is what's really cool. Different staff members of Marvel Comics back in the early 80s, and you know, telling stories, and they do the word balloons and everything. And what's really cool is part of this talks about the cover with Stan on it, but there's also there's a centerfold. Okay, are you ready for this? You might not be ready for this. Steel yourself. You have Stan Lee in a Hulk suit, and there as the centerfold of the book, Marvel Fumetti book. Just a great addition to the collection, And you have a quick draw there, a story there about John Byrne, and back when he was doing Alpha Flight and Fantastic Four and writing The Thing, and just great books. And then you had the back cover. I love the back cover of some of the Marvel staff there making a pyramid. That's all, folks. Just a great, fun, gimmicky book. And I can't imagine how many people, I imagine a lot of people bought this off the stand at the time. I don't remember seeing it on the stands at the time. That was before I was going regularly to a comic book shop. I was still getting my comic books, you know, from grocery stores and drugstores and such as that. So anyway, great. The Marvel Fumetti book, a great one to track down, and I know you can find it on eBay very quickly, or very easily and quickly. Now, last book. This was an insert, as I recall, and I recently reacquired this in a dollar bin a couple of years ago. But this ran, if I remember correctly, this ran in the center of comic books, Marvel comic books, in 1982. Again, this was a year before the Fumetti book. This was before I was getting into, you know, I found my way regularly into comic book stores. I'd found comic book stores, and there were comic book stores in Tulsa at that time, but I wasn't able, you know, as a young teenager to go as often as I would like, and so a lot of times I still got my comics in the grocery stores. But the thing about this particular comic, this particular Gimmick comic, really started my collecting mindset as far as storage and understanding grades and that kind of thing. And it is from 1982, the Marvel Guide to Collecting Comics, with this great Frank Miller, Walt Simonson illustration on the front. And you have the X-Men and Daredevil there kicking back and looking at comics, and stacks of comics. You have the Thing and Thor way back there in the background. But just a great Walt Simonson cover. And some of the things that are interesting, and I'll put some of this stuff up here. Some of the things that are interesting about this book is, you know, it opens with an article about collecting and how people like to collect. But it also it defines things like back issue, Silver Age, Golden Age, original artwork, that kind of thing. Tells what a comic convention is, what a fanzine is. Talks about a fanzine. Talks about the Comic Code Authority, and and lots of other stuff. And all the while with these great, in this case, Dave Cockrum illustrations of the X-Men here, you know, and largely Dave Cockrum. I think the kitty might be John Byrne. I think Kitty Pryde there might be John Byrne, but the rest were. Oh, and actually Colossus is Gil Kane. That's a Gil Kane illustration of Colossus there. But the rest, Nightcrawler, Wolverine, Storm, and Cyclops, those are Cockrum. But anyway, just a really neat book. And talks about the comic book cover and the different items on the comic book cover, what they are. And but one of the really interesting things about this book is it has a guideline for as it says here, a guideline for the beginning collector. As you become more familiar with this hobby, it says, it will become second nature to you to describe the condition, the grade of each book you encounter. And it has, going up, it has poor, good, or poor, fair, sorry, good, fine, and mint. And it skips very fine, which I guess is something that has been added since then. You know, just some neat stuff in here. Some neat, education for the first time or the new burgeoning collector, including, you know, what's right for me, what kind of comics should I be buying, that kind of thing. It talks about your interests and your interest in creators and characters and that kind of thing, driving what you do. And then now there's a great, and I'm going to put these blurbs up here. These are the blurbs I'm going to put up here. But it's better than money in the bank, it says. Now, I'm somewhat of a speculator, but you know me, I don't go over cover price to speculate. I don't dump a lot of money out for a comic that I think I might make, you know, a little bit more money on. But it's better than money in the bank. That's a statement that could get a collector into a lot of trouble, or a comics fan into a lot of trouble, believing that comics in and of themselves are the best investment or better than money in the bank. I will always take money in the bank over a bunch of good comics that may be hot today, but won't be hot 6 months from now or 6 years from now. And so there's some really neat prices here of different comics and of what they were doing then and what they're doing now. You think about what they're doing now, but some of these books, Amazing Fantasy number 15, $1,100 at the time you could get it in high grade. Fantastic Four number 1, $1,100, and Showcase number 4, $1,000. Amazing Spider-Man number 1, $600. Incredible Hulk number 1, $600. Journey into Mystery number 83, $420. Fantastic Four number 2, $400. Showcase number 8, $320. Fantastic Four number 3, $300. And Flash number 105, $275. Now it says these prices are based on an informal survey taken in the fall of 1981. Should not be considered definitive. Prices vary dramatically according to supply and condition. I just really love these kind of period things. And this talks about the you know, comic collecting back then, and even, you know, those definitions back there, just so cool. Things like fanzine, what a fanzine is, and Comics Code Authority, and just a great comic, or just a great gimmick comic, or whatever you want to call it. I love this illustration as well. This is what woke me up about storing my comics. I'll just use this phrase, woke me up, but it talks about how you should store your comics. Okay, this was how I was storing my comics when I first found this book, when I first saw this book in 1982. Shortly thereafter, I went to this. This was the reason. And I'd been in comic book stores before, okay, but for some reason I never thought of applying that to my collection. And so anyway, and of course, wonderful John Buscema illustration of Thor there, as well as just icing on the cake for this book. So anyway, Marvel Guide to Collecting Comics, great gimmick book, and one you should chase down if for no other reason, just for the gitchiness of it, the coolness of it. But if you're an older comic collector like me, an old curmudgeon, you know, and you remember it, certainly for the nostalgia of it. Anyway, great stuff. Hey, thanks for watching. If you haven't yet, then like the channel, like the video, subscribe, and you know, ring the bell, hit the bell there if you would, so you'll get notified of new videos coming out. I'm going to have a video out later this week of a cool haul that I just had out of some dollar boxes. So anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next video.